This is the Evil Never Dies podcast with Brett and Carl. This podcast may contain adult themes, violence, and strong language. Listener discretion is advised.
Happy Halloween, hillbillies. I'm Brett, the host of the Evil Never Dies podcast, here with my co-host Carl.
Hello, hillbillies.
And if you don't know, we pretty much review horror movies and heavy metal albums and basically anything to do with horror and heavy metal. And tonight we're going to do a little short review of a movie that's got both horror and heavy metal in it. And
yeah, you can't go wrong with this movie. It's got Ozzy Osbourne in it. It's got Gene Simmons in it. It's got a soundtrack by Fastway. You just can't go wrong, can you? We'll find out.
I'm sure you'll find a way, Carl.
And it is called Trick or Treat. Now, my good friend right here, Sammy, the pumpkin boy, it is not his movie Trick or Treat. So let's not confuse that. We're not going to put Sammy in this. Well, he's there right there. Well, let's bring Sammy a little closer in. There we go.
Even though there is a Sammy in the movie.
Well, it's not my Sammy. That's my Sammy right there.
All right. Here we go.
If you're watching on YouTube, that is, which I don't think you are, so you don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Trick or Treat, also known as Ragman and Death at 33 RPM.
I always preferred Ragman.
In the foreign markets.
I'm going to refer to it as Ragman from now on.
Okay.
So from now on, when you talk about this movie, let's call it Ragman.
Okay. Directed by Charles Martin Smith. That was his first movie that he ever directed.
And probably his last.
Screenplay by Joel Soyson, Michael S. Murphy, Rhett Topham, Glenn Morgan uncredited, and James Wong uncredited.
James Wan, I know who he is.
Wong.
Yeah, I know who he is. My Final Destination guy.
Okay.
X-Files guy.
Story by Rhett Topham.
I think he's another.
What's that?
I think he's another X-Files guy.
Produced by Michael S. Murphy and Joel Soyson. Cinematography by Robert Elswit. Edited by Jane Swartz Jaffe. Music by Fastway. And Christopher Young was the composer on this. And he's done a bunch of other stuff too. Distributed by De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. Released on October 24th, 1986, right in time for Halloween. Has a running time of 98 minutes. Country of origin is the United States. English language. Budget was $3.5 million.
What did they spend all that money on?
I don't know. Box office, it made 6.8 million, so it made its money back and then some. So
I did not know that.
All right, let's go over the cast here. First off, we got Mark Price as Eddie Weinbauer.
And you know where he's from, don't you?
He was Skippy, man.
He was Skippy from Family Ties.
Skippy
so here we go. We have
Ties.
a heavy metal movie starring Skippy from Family Ties.
Next, we got Tony Fields. He was on Solid Gold.
You ruined my whole story.
I did.
I had a whole story I was going to tell about that. So
Well,
now I've got to skip it. Nope, you done ruined it. Let's move on.
Well, anyway, he was also did videos with Michael Jackson and a
He was a
film,
dancer
yeah,
in a
film
core.
version chorus line. Yep.
But yeah, originally, here's my story. Gene Simmons was going to play that role, and Gene turned it down, so they got the Solid Gold Dancer instead.
Well, you know who else they offered the job to?
Blackie Lawless.
Yes, they did from Wasp.
And Blackie turned it down, I guess. Or
Both
they turned
Gene
Blackie down. I'm not sure.
Blackie says he didn't like the script, so that's why
Neither
he.
did Gene. And Gene was trying to become an actor during this. So we got the Solid Gold Dancer, Tony Fields. So what kind of heavy metal movie is this? Oh, Lord.
Next, we got Lisa Orgolini as Leslie Graham, Doug Savant as Tim Haney, Elaine Joyce as Angie Weinbauer, Eddie's mother, Glenn Morgan as Roger Marcus, Claire Torreo as Maggie Wong Hernandez, Gene Simmons as Nuke the disc jockey, did a cameo. And so did Ozzy Osbourne. He played televangelist Reverend Aaron Gilstrom.
You know, I thought Ozzy was more of a cameo and Gene was in it for at least a few minutes.
Yeah, a few different scenes for sure.
Yeah. So I don't really consider Gene a cameo. Ozzy was. Yeah. And Ozzy had gotten drunk and shaved his head, so he didn't even recognize him.
Next, we got Alice Nunn as Miss Sylvia Cabell, and rounding off with Charles Martin Smith as Mr. Wembley. And that is the cast for Trick or Treat. And I got a couple of trivia. We've already talked about a couple of them.
Well, you want me to tell a little bit about what the movie's about?
Yeah, you can do that. We got a couple of minutes here.
Okay, we'll do the quick version. So
Okay.
it's basically about a bullied heavy metal kid who's devastated after the death of his heavy metal idol, Sammy Kerr, who's played by Solid Gold dancer Tony Fields. So he gets a record from Gene Simmons, plays it backwards, and guess what? Sammy Kerr comes back to life. And yeah, he's a demon rock star dude now. Halloween approaches, and he discovers that he might be the only one who can stop Sammy Kerr from making his satanic comeback from beyond the grave. How cool does that sound? Yeah. Just, yeah.
It was pretty evil.
Yeah.
All right. Carl's shaking his head. Oh, all right. Like we said, all songs were written by the band Fastway, which consists of former Motorhead guitarist Fast Eddie Clark and bassist Pete Way of UFO.
Well, Pete Way was not in the band by this point. Pete had left.
Okay. And the vocalist on that was guy Dave King from Flogging Molly.
Yeah. Now, the soundtrack is phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
I still listen to it to this day. Great soundtrack. It was they did a good job with that.
Yes, they did. It's on my Apple.
Mine too. I've had the CD since shit, probably then when this movie came out. I think I bought the soundtrack.
Did you see this in the theater when it came out?
I did not, but I did have I remember it but I had the soundtrack.
All right, what other trivia do I got here? The title of Sammy Kerr's album, Songs in the Key of Death, is a parody of the title of Stevie Wonder's album, Songs in the Key of Life.
Of course it is. That's part of what's wrong with this movie.
Eddie's best friend Roger is played by Glenn Morgan, who this was his only acting stint, but went on to be a prolific writer, producer, and director. Let's see what he's doesn't really show nothing that he's directed. So,
Nah.
at one point in the movie, Eddie wears an alternative tentacle shirt. This was a punk rock label founded in 1979 by Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys. And he had all kinds of different albums and stuff in his room that they showed in the movie. Megadeth, just a bunch of different bands, Anthrax, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, I remember that part. That was a lot of good stuff there.
a lot of them records melted too. All right. That's all the trivia. There really wasn't much on this. So
No, and we're short for time. So
yes,
let's
we
go
are.
ahead
So
and give our ratings. We rate on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being great and 1 being not great, terrible. I'm going to let Brett go first. What
all
is your
right.
thoughts of Ragman?
I like this movie, especially
You
the
like
soundtrack.
Ragman?
Ragman.
That's the name of it, Ragman.
All right. Like this movie a lot. It was great back in 1986. Uh, great soundtrack, like we talked about. I'm gonna give it a 4.
Well, my views of Ragman is it was a disappointment when I first saw it. It was an embarrassment, and it comes off as being a comedy. Whether that's intentional or not, I have no idea. But it's a dumb movie with some terrible acting, and it's embarrassment to the heavy metal community. I don't like anything about it except the soundtrack, and the soundtrack would be the only redeeming factor of this movie. I do not recommend it. I give this movie a 1. That's right, a 1. Now, the soundtrack, I'll give a 4.5. So, good soundtrack, terrible movie, in my opinion.
I give the soundtrack a 5. It's an awesome soundtrack.
It is. It's short. It's a short soundtrack. And there's a couple of songs that were on some previous Fastway albums. So, I give it just a 4 or 5, but it's a great soundtrack. The movie Ragman is awful. It's got a solid gold dancer playing the heavy metal king. So, good Lord help us. It could
All
have at
right.
least been somebody from Dance Fever. That might have been better.
Dance
Or Soul
Fever.
Train.
I forgot about Dance Fever, dude.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. Well, I guess that's all we got for Trick or Treat, or as Carl likes to
Ragman.
call it, Ragman. So uh thanks to Jerry and Tracy for having us on again this year as part of the Halloween show. We love you guys. And you can check us out on, just search the Evil Never Dies podcast. We're not hard to find.
And we've sort of moved mostly to YouTube. We still have a podcast, but we're
On all
on
the
YouTube.
podcast platforms, YouTube, so all the social medias. Check us out. And happy Halloween, everybody.
And stay evil.
Wake up, sleepyhead.
It's party time!
Rock and roll will never die. At least not this Halloween.
I've heard of raising spirits from the dead by incantations, right?
Yes.
I did that by playing the record backwards.
You're kidding.
Sammy Kerr. He's a rock and roll nightmare.
I am a big fan of yours. I've got all your records. Shut up!
You're the bait. The bait is you.
This message is meant for me.
How can you listen to this stuff?
Shut it off! Shut it off!
What have you done to your stereo?
I wanted a new one.
Sammy Kerr. His fans won't let him die. He won't let them live.
You should be loyal to your hero. Make it turn on you.
Trick or treat.
Looks like we better check out the party punch.